This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Coffee-fueled stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your pocket DJ and host of Coffee-Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's guest is two-time Bram Stoker winner, Eric J. Guignard. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I'm a fan, and it's a wonderful chance to be able to chat with you this afternoon.
Aw, thank you. Just to let the listeners know a little bit before we get into the chat, you and I messaged way back when in about 2017, I believe. But to have you on the show means a lot because you were one of the first mentors for me, if you will, in regard to writing and doing horror and kind of putting myself out there. So this is kind of a big deal. So to read your books and to have you on, this means the world to me. So thank you.
I really appreciate hearing that, Michelle. And I remember chatting with you online years ago, and it was wonderful, and it was nice to discuss life and books and writing with you. So it's definitely a two-way street.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's just jump right in. So you're a technical writer by day, yes?
Yes.
So how did you get into that? I was a technical writer as well. So I'm fascinated. I love what we do. Please let us know, how did you get into technical writing before you got into your horror writing?
Yeah, so I used to be involved in the financial industry. I was in mortgage sales from a wholesale side. The day I got out of college, that's what I did for 10 years. And I loved the job, and that was my career, and I expected to spend my life doing it. But unfortunately, there was the great financial recession and the decline, and the company I worked for went bankrupt. All my competitors went bankrupt. Everybody, especially I live on the Inland Empire, part of Southern California, and that was particularly hard hit. And really, the job that I had, there was a very negative reputation that was suddenly associated with it as well, and I had to reestablish myself. But fortunately, I always try to maintain good relations with individuals. And I did have a chance to go back into another bank and work with some former coworkers, but instead of being on the sales side, they asked me to help out on the operations side, because even though I was a sales rep, and that comes with a really bad reputation of being really cheesy and sleazy, I held myself to a very high level of ethics and standards. And I like things being in black and white, and I like documents. And I used to always put together my own marketing guides, and I would sit down with customers, and a lot of it was training sessions, and I would create my own manuals to show. And all the documents that I would create, I ended up sharing it with coworkers to make their jobs easier. And so there'd be clear, concise communication, which means a lot to me. But anyways, long story short, I was brought into the bank to work in that capacity only because I had those relations that knew. I actually enjoyed doing it. And prior to that, I didn't know what a technical writer was. But once I started doing it, I really loved it. I enjoyed it. And I've been doing that on and off for, 10 or 12 years. And I also was able to become a professor teaching technical writing through the University of California system in Riverside. I did that for 7 years, but that program unfortunately closed down during COVID. But it was great being able to be an adjunct professor in technical communications and writing, and I still do it today. And I work as a freelancer, so I go from company to company. As I believe you were similar roles as well.
Yeah, so my nickname, I'm not sure if you got any nicknames, but my nickname used to be SOP Lady. I love SOP Lady. Like, I own that title. Like, anytime people would see me coming in, and the other one, I love making binders. So as you were talking, I was like, I used to have like a row of binders behind me.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I would print out everything in duplicate, and I liked everything being organized. And I had a whole library of like 3-ring binders in my cubicles. Now it's great because it's all electronic, so so everything is PDF'd and chapters indexed. But yeah, that's funny that you say that. That's my exact situation.
So I used to work for a toilet paper manufacturer, and I would write the documents for the training for the operators to operate the machines. And the binders were huge, and they would be attached to the machine, and the mechanics and stuff, they're like, is there another way that we can like get these documents, like when we're inside the machine, like it's kind of hard to carry, the binders and this and that. And I was like, well, we can come up with QR codes, and we can scan them on the outside, and you can like scan it with your phone, and you can take it inside, and there you have the manual right on. And they're like, oh my God. And I was like, technology. Gotta love it.
Making their life easier.
That's what it's all about. I love it.
Your nickname's gonna switch. Instead of SOP lady, it'll be QR lady.
QR code lady.
QR codes for everything.
Yep. And I loved it. And it was one of my favorite things. But yes, technology does help us in that regard. So, and it's funny, I still have like binders and page protectors. Those are like my two favorite things in an office supply store. So if you walked into an office supply store, Eric, run free, Eric, what would you pick in an office supply store?
Oh my gosh. I love binders because I like organizing, but I like paper. I like going to see like, oh, this is like a really nice quality paper, and I could feel the fibers, and what's the weight of this paper, and here's the coloration of it. And yeah, I go to that, and yeah, I still look at binders, and I have a huge stock of page protectors, which is so ridiculous and outdated. And my son came to me. My son's in high school, and he said, I have to put together a portfolio to present to my professor, and it can't just be electronic. You have to like hold it. And I was like, oh my God, you came to the right place. I have page protectors. Son, do you know what a page protector is? And he kind of looked at me and he's like, I think I heard of that. Like somebody mentioned that like years ago in my memory. And I'm like, let me blow off the cobwebs and dust of this pile of like boxes of office supplies in my garage, and you'll behold like this holy grail of the office worker of 1997.
Totally. I think, oh my God, you're not going to believe what's behind me. I have an unopened box of sheet protectors and small binders. But and then we had to have lockout tagout because the machine could like literally eat you, which scared the crap out of me. So one of the things I had my own lock, and I would lock out and I would lock the machine so that no one could turn it on while I was up inside trying to figure out.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. No, there were horror stories, Eric, total horror stories, and I was like, you know what? I need to find a safer job. So that was my first job out of grad school. I need more of a desk job. So then I switched to a medical device company, and I learned how to help people make crowns. So that was a much, much better, much safer job.
Dental crowns?
Dental crowns, yeah. So it's a really cool process. And as you know, and we are going to talk about horror. We're gonna wrap up this technical. We're gonna get to the horror.
Force just technical writing onto your readers for the entire podcast. They're so bored about hearing about horror and authors. Let's get into the nitty gritty of policies and user guides.
Yes! I freaking love that stuff. And as a matter of fact, I even made an SOP for how to be a guest on the show. If a guest was nervous, I was like, here, watch this quick video I made. On how to relax and be a natural on the show. But SOPs, binders, policies and procedures, all of that. And if you think about it, it's to help the company save money, and it's for the employee to be safe. So that's really what it comes down to. And I took pride in that. I took pride in saving the company money and keeping the employees safe.
I always like the idea of just a consistency in product, a consistency in doing business, a consistency in routine.
Absolutely. That's an honorable profession, damn it. Okay, so now, without further ado, let's get to know you as a horror author.
All
so
right.
How old were you when you wrote your first story?
How old was I? I wrote stories when I was a kid. Ever since I could write, I would make stories. I mean, they were stories that were, I'm sure if somebody else were to read the story, they would just say, "Oh, that's so cute," and they'd pat me on the head because it would be about a dog and an alien and and a talking shoe or something, just like silly things, because that's how I like to express myself in my imagination. I would draw pictures. I would act out stories with toys that I have, and I would like to write down. I would actually write down here's what my characters, my toys are doing. They're playing together, they're having a battle together, they're having issue. But then I would also have little corresponding stories and pictures, and very inspired by comic books and and graphic literature, books for children.
Very cool. Do you still have any of your first stories?
No. I wish I did. I'm sure if my mom has something in her hope chest, like buried away, but probably not very much out over the years of into people downsizing.
For sure. Did you always know you were going to be a writer? Was that something that you thought of as a child, as you were writing, where you're like, this is what I want to do for a living? Have you noticed how Coffee Fueled Stories doesn't have any ads? That's because I work tirelessly to keep this show alive. After 3 years on my own, I've decided I need to ask for your help. I've never asked anyone to subscribe. I've never asked anyone to leave a review. I've never asked anyone to rate the show. And I've never asked anyone to pay to listen. There are a few ways you can help support the show. I've created a Patreon page, Coffee Fueled Stories, and a subscription section on my podcast website. It's simple to support and help me keep my dream alive. Just click the link in the show notes to set up your paid subscription option. It's that easy. Thank you for your support.
Yes and no. When you say, did I ever think I would do it? The answer is no. Although asking if I wanted to do it, the answer would be yes.
Okay. And were you Go ahead.
In high school, I wanted to pursue creative arts. That's what I was driven towards. I loved art and illustration and theater and writing and books and just basically anything that is imaginative and involved in artistic endeavors. But I also came from, a very, let's just say, more of a conservative, fiscally sound, sensible family. My father was from the military and he worked in the government, and he came up from poverty. He was just in dire poverty in East Los Angeles. And so having a regular steady job was very meaningful to him. And those were values that were kind of instilled into me that, hey, writing and playing, it's pretty fun, but you're not going to make a living doing it. And you need to go to college and you need to go get a degree and work in business. So I did go that path. And then, as I mentioned, I had a great job and I loved it. I thought I was doing fine until the industry completely imploded. And then I found that I was basically starting back at square one. And always in the back of my mind, I've always thought, gee, I wish I would have pursued the thing that I enjoyed in the beginning of my life, because who knows where that would have taken me at that point, instead of pursuing the thing that I didn't enjoy, but I thought was going to give me stability and, some level of financial success and stability. I wanted to get a house and I wanted to just be a middle class, suburban dude. But I completely fell apart. And then I went back to square one. And, I didn't start writing until in my early 30s, I'm more in my mid 30s. I really wish I would have started a lot earlier. Not to say that I would have been any great success or that I would have been any further along to where I am now, but it's always just in the back of your mind, the body of work that I would have had would have been much more expansive. The lessons learned would have been learned much earlier. I would have acquired more wisdom. At this point in my life, I would have more skill, more savvy, presumably. Or else I would have burned myself out, or something else would have occurred. The what ifs in life.
So that leads to this question. So because you are a husband, a father, a soccer dad, a scout dad, a runner, and an author. Like, how do you do it all, Eric? Like, good Lord, that's quite a plate. So how do
I'm
you eat all that?
Yeah, it's a lot. I always try to prioritize my kids first. That definitely means the most to me. And being a technical writer, I work from home. And
Right.
also because I work on contracts, the work really fluctuates. So I might work multiple contracts and I might work 60 or more hours a week trying like a squirrel, like storing up all the nuts, like, oh my God, I gotta get as much money as I can while the work is here, because I know in 3 months down the road, all of a sudden I have nothing. I have nothing coming in. So I really needed to have stored up my money over the previous. But then all of a sudden, I have extra time on my hands. So that's when I do my fiction writing. So I try to get my technical writing, and I also do freelance. I do ghost writing. I do content writing. I kind of have my finger in a lot of different projects, just because it's kind of the life of the freelancer. My passion is the fiction side, and that's what I want to do the absolute most. But as most fiction authors can relate, you're not paying the bills off of that. I'm not making any money. I make decent money doing content writing and technical writing. And I like it. I'm totally satisfied doing it, but I'm much more passionate doing the fiction writing. But volunteer work, I love youth soccer. And as you mentioned, I'm involved in the Scouts. And these are all volunteer activities that I do. I look at it as like a part-time job almost. I do them in the nighttime and weekends. So it works out because the kids are in school during the day, and that's when I do my day job. And then at nighttime, they come home, and I have these other activities that I can work with, and I have a chance to be a part of their life and to really kind of live vicariously through their excitement and their activities and accomplishments.
That's awesome and very inspirational. So that's really cool. So being that you are attracted to fiction and horror, and you are in the Horror Writers Association, you're a member. How did you get involved? Like, did somebody approach you? Did you come across it? Like, how did you get into horror and get into the club? And then I would love to ask you about what it felt like to win a Bram Stoker Award.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, Michelle, I always realize after the fact, I ramble a lot and my answers kind of go all over the place. And I find myself just like talking and talking and talking. So please put me back on track if I start rambling too much, because I could give you like a half an hour, like, oh, this is my quick version, but it's still going to be 30 minutes long when I tell you, oh, this is what happened, because it's so meaningful to me.
Okay.
Like, I
Awesome.
love horror literature and I love writing. And I love so much being part of the indie horror industry. And I've made so many friendships, and I'm so passionate about it that, again, once I start talking about it, I'm going to go on and on and on. But I will, to answer your question specifically, nobody ever reached out to me. I didn't know anybody in the industry. It kind of tied in with me being out of work and having to reinvent myself and saying, gosh, I used to love writing and reading horror, and I purposely pushed myself out of it because I was in business. I didn't even read horror literature anymore. I didn't read books. I read books on leadership, and I read books on like motivational theory, and I read bibliography. I liked reading, but I wasn't reading fiction until one day. This is during the zombie craze about like 15 years ago or so. I was Christmas shopping, and I went into an old Borders bookstore, and they had an end cap of zombie anthologies. And all of a sudden my heart just like stopped. And I thought, oh my God, I remember the joy that reading horror anthologies when I was a kid, like how much that meant to me. And I'm like, I haven't read this stuff in so long. And I bought like 3 of them. I bought like a John Skip Zombies anthology. I bought John Joseph Adams Zombie, and I bought a Christopher Golden. And I read through them all like immediately. And all of a sudden, like it was just this fire that had gone out in my heart. All of a sudden it was reignited. I thought, oh my God, I love horror again. And I started like picking up all these old books and I started rereading it. And I was, at the time, I started doing content writing, like nonfiction articles in the old Yahoo pay-per-click model. So I would write like an entomology insect paper on, here's this species of the dung beetle, and I'd publish it. And then the more people that clicked on it to read it, I would get paid like a half a cent per click.
Holy crap.
And I was telling like one of my wife's friends about this because she was like doing blogging for profit. And I was like, man, I wish I could just get back into fiction writing again because I don't know what to do with myself. And she was literally, Eric, why don't you then? What's stopping you? And I took a step back. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's stopping me. Nothing. I'm not doing anything else of note. And I just started writing. I literally had to go into the Google search engine. At the time, maybe it was like Ask Jeeves or Dogpile, or whatever else. And I was typing in the search phrases like how to become a horror author and what to do, like where to publish my horror writing. And I joined like forums and old like posting boards from people. And from that point on, I just you start making friends and you start making relationships, but I knew absolutely nobody. I made lots of missteps at the beginning trying to form relationships. And, sometimes you kind of partner with quote unquote the wrong people, like the people that are, toxic or, they're looking to take advantage of newbies. But a lot of it is just kind of like lessons learned. I found out about the Horror Writers Association. I was so thrilled, and I joined at the very initial starting level because coming from a business background, I always joined professional industry groups.
Yes.
Yep. As a technical writer, I'm a member of the Society of Technical Technical Writers. That's part of networking. And I know some people, they have no interest in it, and they look at it like, oh, it's very incestuous and there's no benefit. Being a member of the Horror Writers Association is ultimately really inexpensive for the benefits that I personally get out of it. And having joined them, it literally it helped me so much in networking. That was the biggest thing because all of a sudden I had access to other writers with shared interests. It wasn't me just going through a Google search engine and like finding the most random strangers all over the world who, I don't know who these people are, but I just want to make friendships. I want to talk to people about writing. And I was able to do that through Horror Writers Association. And I was able to take advantage of their scholarship programs. I was able to take advantage of their writing programs, their mentorship program. I had such a huge positive experience in the mentorship program through a gentleman. He just passed away, a very successful author by the name of Weston Oakes was my mentor in HWA. And he was a big name publisher, and he became a very dear friend. And he helped me to navigate through the horror writing industry. So I'm a mentor now for HWA because I want to carry it forward. And I try to also instill like positive advice and just be a resource to people who have started out. And even more importantly, of just joining the Global Horror Writers Association is the fact that being in Southern California, they have a local Los Angeles chapter. Yeah. So that gave me the opportunity once a month to go in person and be able to get together with like-minded peers and just hang out and talk about books. Because even though you're part of an online group and we have social media, I don't get the same interactions online as I do in person.
Absolutely.
It's nice to email with people and to chat and to comment about your projects. And I get very excited about hearing other people's projects, but I like meeting people in person. I like talking with people in person. And we would just hang out in a bookstore, drink coffee, talk about projects. It's a chance like behind the hand whisper, oh, this is what this person is doing. And here's a good publisher to, write stories for. So I really credit that availability of having my friends, and those are like the earliest like horror writing friends that I had were those members of the Los Angeles chapter of the Horror Writers Association. And I still advise anybody who wants to be a horror writer, really at any level of your career, I always recommend it. There's just so many benefits that, I mean, on their webpage, it just goes through dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah,
so
and
that wasn't too long-winded, and I
no,
answered
no.
the question.
No, that's perfect. And that's actually how I think I ended up reaching out to you way back when. And it was at the time John Palisano was working the booth when I found I was at the it was at Festival of Books, I believe.
Oh yeah, the Festival of Books. We're still there every year.
And he was working the booth, and he was the one talking about the Los Angeles chapter and how once a month everybody gets together, exactly what you were just saying. And of course, I was so terrified. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I haven't written it. Like I felt like I almost felt like I don't usually feel like imposter syndrome, because I am confident. I am a technical writer. I have the skill and the ability. Like, so I don't have imposter
You go, girl.
syndrome.
That's right.
But at meeting the booth, standing there talking with, a true horror writer, when I had only written like maybe 4 little pieces of flash horror or something, I felt like, I don't know if I belong to this group. Like, is it, should I try? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And like you said, I love that they have the option. They're like, it said something like, you're interested in horror, but you haven't actually published or anything like that. And so I'm like, that's me. I'm that member. That's me. But
I started out the same way, and John Palisano, he's one of my dear friends now, and he's also one of the first people that I met there in the Los Angeles chapter. And oh my word, the horror writers are the nicest people in the world. Before horror writers, I was looking for any writing group to join, and I joined random groups. Whereas horror writers, you talk to almost any horror writer and they will put their arm around you and they will say, they won't talk about themselves. They'll ask about you. What have you written? What can I help you with?
yeah.
Let's talk about books. Let's do anything that you want to do. And with a smile on their face. They're therapeutic. It's thrilling. It's exciting. It's just so endearing.
And thank you for saying that, because that's exactly how it felt the very first time. Like I said, I was at the booth. I was nervous. I was scared. I was like, I hadn't done anything. I'm afraid to join. I want to, but I'm afraid to. And like I said, John handed me, like, literally the booth was full of business cards and all kinds of authors, and literally he just gave me a bunch of stuff, and he's just like, it's cool. I was like, and I was like, okay. So I literally had this stack of stuff. Okay, these people, they did it. They put themselves out there. Like, I can do this. And that's actually, I think, when I started messaging you, was I had just become a member, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? And then, you can see the people's profiles, when you go into the site, and then you can like reach out and, like you were saying, just like write to people and connect with people, and like, how do you do this? What do I do? I don't know what I'm doing, and things of that nature. And so here we are.
Years later. The funnest part that I see, like, over the years, is to see like those individuals you've communicated with, in prior lives, if you will, and we can still get together and talk about it, have these shared experiences together.
Absolutely. So now that we've talked about the Horror Writers Association and the people that you've met, I'm just curious to know, like, the Bram Stoker Award. I mean, this is like the highest honor in horror. So you went from as you were telling us your path, and now here you have achieved the greatest success in horror literature.
Yes.
How did that feel, Eric?
Oh my, I literally had tears in my eyes. Yeah, I was completely blown away. I mean, it's one of the best feelings that you can have, as a writer. And I have comic books and books where they talk about, this work won a Bram Stoker Award. And to be able to have my name associated with such a prestigious accomplishment was really just mind blowing, like in all sense of the word. So Yeah, there are very few experiences in my life, as not that I've done that much, so I can say there's not a lot of experiences that really level up to that sense of hearing my name called out as the winner for a Bram Stoker Award.
That's just like, that's so cool. So I'm going to ask you some really silly questions because I think
Okay.
it's time. So, where is the strangest place you've ever thought of a story? And I'll give you an example. So, like in an elevator, a
You're saying the
shower,
strangest place that I would think of a story to be set in, or the strangest place where I personally have been thinking of a story?
created. Yes. Where have you been? Where's the strangest place you've ever been where you were creating a story? Like gas station bathroom, like
Yeah, the bathroom's an obvious place. I'm sitting there like thinking about life as everybody else does. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question because I really have story ideas running in my mind everywhere I go. So a lot of times when I talk about the craft of writing, a lot of times I will write out passages, I'll write out scenes and ideas in my mind. And then when I actually sit down to write it by hand, the idea is kind of already like half formed out. And so it pours out very easily. And because of that, again, I try to think of ideas very frequently. So I don't know, wherever I go, like last week, I was at SeaWorld for a Cub Scouts camp with my daughter. So I was literally got to sleep underneath like an aquarium exhibit. We spent the night there underneath the sea turtle exhibit. And I was thinking of horror ideas. So that's a pretty silly place, I suspect, in the grand scheme of things.
awesome.
In my bed underneath the sea turtles, thinking of horror literature.
That is so cool. So, if you could sit and chat with any author, living or dead, who would it be?
Any author, living or dead? Gosh. Oh, that's so tough because it's just like asking what is your favorite author? It's kind of a question that like day by day changes. I love Neil Gaiman. Like he would be a huge like top list author to speak with. And I think a lot of that reason is just because I melt at the sound of his voice. I'm like, oh God, I just want to hear Neil Gaiman. Like just to hear his interview on any topic that he speaks about. I'm like, God, Neil Gaiman just has the most glorious sounding voice.
Doesn't he?
He does his own audiobooks and they're just mesmerizing. And he's just so thoughtful and so just soft and gentle when he speaks. And I always think, man, that would be a wonderful author to speak with. Although I might find myself just kind of like falling back into a trance, like, like speaking with them. But gosh, out of all the wise and venerated authors throughout history, I don't know who else. Jack Kerouac was John Steinbeck.
Oh, Steinbeck.
Kerouac, yeah. Oh, Jack London. I'm going to go with Jack London because
all right.
Louis L'Amour, because Jack London and Louis L'Amour were adventurers.
Okay.
That's why. Though either of those two, because they traveled the world, they had tons of real life explorations, adventures. Like they had the life stories that caused these beautiful books to be written about. I felt like they were also nonfiction authors, and they were very, very well spoken and eloquent on a number of topics. So yeah, I'm gonna go with either of them.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's because as a boy, I was really into reading adventure literature, like boys' adventure books.
Yeah.
And Sullivan Lines and Rudyard Kipling stories, and going out and traveling and such.
That's awesome. What is an anthology you haven't done yet or want to do? So, for example, this rockabilly. Okay,
I have it already. I know.
I mean, Pop the Clutch. The rockabilly horror is got it. Like when I found out that is, I was like, oh my God, I have got to read this. I'm like, that just sounds absolutely insanely cool and like the coolest anthology of horror ever. Is that the best one you've done, or is there some other anthology you are cooking up, so to speak?
Oh, I have so many anthology ideas, Michelle. First of all, I'm so happy to hear that you love Pop the Clutch. I love the rockabilly scene. The retro rockabilly and tiki scene, and I was real huge into that like counterculture movement. Going out with the bands and car shows in my throughout my 20s. So I was so excited. That was such a fun anthology to do.
Yes.
Moving forward, again, literally, I have a list of anthology ideas. I love anthologies. My earliest horror reading was generally anthologies. Outside of the mainstream authors like Anne Rice and Dean Koontz and Stephen King that I was reading as a child, the first chance that I had to learn about these other authors, like the variety of just outlandish, peculiar, strange, experimental ideas that really pushed the boundaries of storytelling, was through anthologies.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you this one. This is my dream. And I've shared this with people because I tell people the more individuals I share this idea with, and the more that this idea gets out there in the public, somebody somewhere is going to say, they're going to snap their fingers and they're going to say, Eric, I like that idea. Let's make it happen. The board game Clue.
Yes.
All of the characters and settings tied in with Cthulhu. So the title of the anthology is Clue-Thulu.
Okay, that's
because if you think about this, generally the stories, the best stories, the Lovecraftian stories of Cthulhu tend to take place the late 1800s, the early 1900s.
Yeah.
That is where the original Clue idea is set. So all of these characters, there's already a very natural ambiance and background environment to them. So the story is already there. Tell me, Colonel Mustard, world-traveling, old British Colonel Mustard with his revolver out exploring like these Cthulhu monsters that are coming up in Antarctica. They have this old Gothic Victorian mansion. And every room is a story unto itself. Every room can have these very quiet. Did you have, the King in Yellow, like the books found in the Clue library? And you have the botanical gardens in the Clue mansion. What is growing? What Cthulhu elements are growing in the botanical gardens?
Oh, you've got to do this. This just sounds freaking amazing.
You have the Hollywood starlets. You have the professor. Every Cthulhu story has a professor who's going out there and exploring. Here in Clue, they have all of Lovecraft's like stereotypical characters all in a board game. Please let me put together an anthology combining these characters and Cthulhu.
That would be brilliant.
A very nice proposal to Hasbro, if I could use, because obviously, they own the rights to it.
Right.
And they sent the angriest, legal letter back, like, don't you ever touch our property or you're going to hear from our lawyers. And granted, that's what I expected. I was like, well, I know. I got to take the chance, though, right? I mean, I got to see where I can go. And of course, I was a no-name. I sent this proposal years and years ago to them. But that's why I keep suggesting, if I tell more people about it, maybe someday I will be entrusted enough, or I will have enough sway in the horror community. Some representative from Hasbro was sitting there scratching their head thinking, gosh, we would love to do a tie-in work with the horror community. But we just can't think of any ideas right now. I wonder what's available out there. Or some agent is going to come to me and say, Guignard, I like the cut of your jib. I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna connect you with the right people. Because although Hasbro said no to me years ago, it's just the right backing. I'm sure because I had no publisher backing, but I'm sure if I had like an IDW or Dark Horse, publisher behind me or one of the big five, Hasbro, they would turn around. They have Hasbro puts out Monopoly games, all kinds of different themes, based off of movie properties and television properties and cultural icons. So I know they're willing with the right connections. So I'm just hoping someday they will look upon me as one of those right connections.
So this is where we're gonna go.
Magic happens.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put it out there. That's freaking awesome. Like, I literally wrote it down. Cthulhu. I dig it. I've got it written down. Like, we talked about it, and here I'm even gonna put the year in here, 2024. So I keep all my notes. So there you go.
In my mind, I have all of the branding laid out. I have all of like the formatting and illustration and curly Q, opening letters and the intro I would write. So it's someday.
That's freaking brilliant. I think that's great. I'm like, that just sounds like absolutely awesome. So I am going to ask you a question, because you mentioned coffee shops.
Okay.
So how much coffee in a day do you drink? And what is your go-to coffee drink?
I just drink black coffee, and I usually drink about, not even, a cup, maybe a cup and a half in the morning, and then an afternoon coffee, between two and 3 cups, just black, straight black coffee, Folgers, French roast, if I make it here at home on my own.
No fuss, no muss. I love it. It's easy. That's what I call apocalypse coffee. Like, with me, like, I would not survive the apocalypse, because I like cream and sugar in my coffee. So, I haven't learned to drink it black yet. So apocalypse coffee there's nothing wrong with that.
That's so weird. I don't know how I transitioned. I really honestly cannot put like a time when I transitioned into drinking black coffee, because when I started drinking coffee, I would very heavily put sugar in it. And then over the years, it just, the taste of it being sweet just became less and less appealing. And then I grew to enjoy like the bitter, dark, strong, bold taste of it just being black. But again, I don't really remember like the moment in time when I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drink this coffee and I'm not going to put any sugar in it. I'm sure it probably related to some moment when I didn't have sugar at hand, and it was like a matter of either A, I'm going to get my caffeine rush without sugar, or B, I'm just going to suffer needlessly.
Oh my God, Eric. You seriously have been, like, it has been so awesome to talk with you, because like I said, we messaged, way back when, we were just emailing when I was, new to the Horror Writers Association. And so to have you on the show, to talk with you, to actually be able to converse with you. I know this is not exactly in person, but this is pretty darn close. So this was a true pleasure. And I really enjoyed your books, by the way. That Which Grows Wild, is that the newer one? Is that the newest one?
That was my last fiction collection, through Cemetery Dance. And then, that collection earned me my second Bram Stoker Award.
Yes.
So obviously that means a lot. I love short stories. That's always my preferred format of writing. I love reading short stories. I love writing short stories. I love talking about short stories. Doing editing, publishing, promoting others. So putting together the collections, thrilling to me. I mean, that's like a milestone in life, that when I die, I've left this behind in my legacy. Individual stories in magazines and periodicals, they're gonna fall away. But I could say, here was my first collection. And then I also have my second collection will be coming out within the next year or so. So I'll be looking forward to like heavily promoting that and talking about that one as well. So that will be A Graveside Gallery, Ooh. Tales of Ghosts and Dark Matters. So it's kind of like a companion to this first collection, kind of set up in a very similar tone.
Very cool. On your That Which Grows Wild, let's talk about this really quick. So on the first story, a case study in natural selection and how it applies to love. I wasn't sure where we were going with that. And so, that was a really, and I love the names that you come up with, like a case study in natural selection and how it applies to love. Like, that is just freaking, that's an awesome title. And then The Last Days of the Gunslinger, John Amos. And then Mama. Okay. When I got to Mom, like when I finished these stories, I had different reactions to each one. And it was just this, there's something about short stories. You just know how much information to give and when to stop. And that's exactly how these stories felt. Like when I was done with Mama, I just literally went, damn, Eric. Like I was like, I had to put it down and I just was like, okay, that was freaking awesome. Like that, I did not expect that. Like, yes. And I don't want to give any spoilers, so we're just gonna tease the crap out of the listeners right now.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much. I always try to keep all my stories very different from one another as well. Very different characters, very different settings. So again, that's why I'm proud of my collection, because it's, no two stories are alike, and they all tackle different subject matter. And then I try to tackle the subject matter in thoughtful and unique ways, just looking at things in different perspectives.
Yes, and the last case at the baggage auction, I was really hoping you weren't going to. Again, I don't want to give anything away. I am so glad that you ended. You had mentioned that the story went through a couple of iterations, but this is the original story. And
Yes.
so I was actually really, really happy with that. And then, like I said, without giving anything away, I loved how you ended this. I was like, because I was starting to get mad.
Yes.
I was starting to get mad.
You never know. It could go the other way. The person could say, I hated how you ended it. What are you doing with your life?
I was on the edge of my seat and I was like, okay, Eric, don't piss me off, man. Like, you better give me something good here, man.
Oh,
like,
heart be still.
And so the way that you ended, I was like, literally, I was like, yes. Okay, it's all good.
Thank you again. That means so much to hear positive feedback.
It was
a lonely journey being a writer.
Right? It was a true pleasure. And then I went into Pop the Clutch, because I wanted to see what that was all about. What was that craziness all about? And then I wanted to devour and also savor that which grows wild. So thank you. It was a true pleasure reading these books. I enjoyed them very much.
Thank you. And again, really appreciate that, hearing that.
I asked the guests to say, go forth and be magical.
Okay. Go forth and be magical.